Welcome, everyone. My name is Amber Gregory, the CSR coordinator for Teleperformance USA. And during the month of March, our employees will be given the opportunity to raise money for Wounded Warrior Project. To help us kick off this campaign, I'm pleased to welcome Dan Miller from Wounded Warrior Project's Warriors Speak program. Dan is a self-proclaimed history buff, and although many people consider historical research to be work, Dan calls it a hobby. Visit his home in Illinois, and you'll be surrounded by history books and memorabilia, particularly those related to the Marine Corps and law enforcement. His passion for history grew more and more intense during his 30-year career in the U.S. Marine Corps. While serving our country, Dan's experiences included multiple deployments, more combat than he can care to remember, and too many friends and fellow warriors lost. Dan struggled for many years, but ultimately was able to overcome life's toughest challenges, and today he spends his time helping others, raising awareness for the issues faced by our nation's veterans, and inspiring all of us to find hope in our lives. Please join me in welcoming a man who has dedicated his life to service. From Wounded Warrior Project, Dan Miller.
Hello. First off, I'd like to thank Amber and the folks at Teleperformance USA for allowing me to speak, and thank you for supporting Wounded Warrior Project. I can tell you right now that Wounded Warrior Project wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the support of people such as yourselves. We're a 5013C, we're a nonprofit, and everything that we do for our nation's warriors. Our mission is to honor and empower our nation's wounded warriors. My story is not unlike thousands and thousands of men and women that raise their hands on their own accord to serve this country, to go overseas, or to serve, here in the United States during a time of war, to put their lives on the line because they believe in freedom. They believe in the freedoms that we hold closely to our hearts, that we enjoy every day. A lot of people ask me why I joined the military, what drove me to do it. And, I'm a simple kid that grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mother raised me on her own. And one of the things that my mother instilled in me as a young man was service to others before self. She put that into my head at a very young age. And she explained that, to have a good life, to lead a decent life, it's not about just you. It's about what you can do for others and how you can help them. And in turn, you're helping yourself. And as I started to grow older and I was in high school and I played football and I wrestled and I joined a couple of different little clubs and organizations, it started to kind of get me to understand in my head. I started to realize what she meant. And at a very young age, at 17, I made a decision. And I sat down with my mom and I said, I want to go in the military. I didn't know what branch, but I wanted to serve our country. I had read in history books about the valor and the honor that men and women had shown during World War I, World War II, during Korea, during Vietnam. And that just struck me. And I wanted to be like those individuals. I wanted to be valorous and I wanted to have honor and I wanted to do something bigger than myself. Well, at first, my mother was not really too interested in her only son going off to the services, but my uncle, who was very much like a father to me, he had been a Marine and he was also a Chicago police officer. And this comes into play a little bit later. But, he kind of got involved in the conversation and he suggested it would be good for me if I checked out the Marine Corps. Well, my mother reluctantly agreed, and we went down and we talked to the Marine Corps recruiter. And the minute I saw that the way he stood, the way he talked, the way he acted, I knew I wanted to be him. So, I kind of prodded my mom for a while, and she finally agreed, and she signed me up at 17 to go into the Delantry program for the Marine Corps. And what that meant is, as soon as I graduated high school, within a couple of weeks, I was off to boot camp, off to my great adventure. Well, here's this little skinny, lanky kid per se going off to San Diego. Haven't really ever traveled anywhere. I'm in boot camp, and I think within the first day or so, I was telling myself or asking myself, what did I do? Why did I do this? This is crazy. I don't want to be here because it was just an incredibly hard world, and the drill instructors were just everywhere and always yelling, and everything was confusion and chaos. And I had to make that decision. Was I going to give up or was I going to man up, shall we say? Well, I didn't want to disappoint my mother or my uncle. So, I hunkered down and I graduated recruit training as a brand new United States Marine. And at that moment, when I was standing on the parade deck and I saw my mother's eyes and how proud she was and how proud my uncle was, I felt for the first time in my life a sense of pure accomplishment. So, life was great. And hey, my first duty station was Hawaii. So this kid from Southside Chicago, I'm going to Hawaii. I don't know anything about Hawaii other than it's tropical and I'm going there. And so I ended up stationed in Hawaii and I loved it. It was a great time and good training. And at that time I was in a artillery unit, we shot big cannons and, we'd go out in the field and life was great and everything was fine. And we would deploy from there. We'd go to different countries that I never thought in the world I'd ever be. One of those countries was Japan. And we went to Japan and we were in Japan at one certain time. And the news came down that a guy named Saddam Hussein had invaded the country of Kuwait. Where's Kuwait? Who's Saddam Hussein? Uh, and then before you know it, we're on a plane and I'm in Saudi Arabia with all my friends and our bosses, our leadership is telling us we're at war and we're going to go up to the front line and this is for real. And, the enemy's over there and jets are flying overhead. And so the battle began. It was very short. But for me personally, the first time I got shot at, which I did, the first time that bullet whizzed past my head, the realization came in that, wow, okay, all right, somebody just tried to hurt me, and this is really for real. And it was a wake up call in a sense. I mean, up until that point in time, it had been nothing but training and a lot of joking around, but all of a sudden, this was for real. And after 10 months of being in the desert, the war ended, very quickly, but we were stuck out there for about 10 months. And during that time, we had to, what they call police the battlefield. And so we had to go all over the battlefield and collect all the remains of the enemy that had been killed. And I'd never even seen a dead person, let alone spent months picking them up. And as a young man, it didn't register to me. I didn't, the horror that I saw, the horror that man can do to man in war, it didn't really register to me. I just kind of went along and did what I was supposed to do. And all I wanted to do was get back to Hawaii. I think all of us just wanted to go home. We were tired of living in the desert. I didn't take a shower for about 4 months because there wasn't enough water to do so. And so, grimy and tired, we just wanted to go home. Well, eventually we were allowed to leave and we flew back to Hawaii. And the first thing on my mind was, hey, I want to go home, see my mom. And during that time, this was back when there were no cell phones, there were no computers, none of that stuff existed. And, I would get letters from my mom. In fact, I'm in my office here at home, and my home is in Joliet, Illinois. It's just outside Chicago, but I could reach down to my desk and pull out the letters right now. I still have them. So I had a big stack of letters from my mom. When I called home, my uncle answered the phone, and my uncle said, "You need to come home right now." And I said, "Why?" And, I think that we all come to a fork in the road in life. We all come to these forks in the road, sometimes more than once. And I think this was the first major fork in my road. Um, my uncle said, "Hey, you got to come home right now." And I said, "I want to talk to my mom." He said, "No, no, you come home right now." And I said, "I want to talk to my mom." He said, "You don't understand. You need to get on a plane and come home. I'm not going to explain it to you on the phone." He wouldn't tell me what was going on. So I begged my command and I said, "Something's at home, going on at home." And they're like, "Okay, go ahead." And I got on a plane and I took all the letters and I started reading through all of them. And it's a pretty long flight from Hawaii to Chicago. And I kept reading all these letters going through and through, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't see anything or read anything that made any difference than what she'd written, which was nothing but positive stuff for me. I got home in enough time to hold my mother when she died. She died in my arms from cancer. There went my rock. There went the one person in my life that I knew I could always trust and believe in, and the person that had raised me and had taught me service to others before self. So I was just devastated and I didn't know what to do. And my uncle stepped in. He said, "You have to make a decision. You're going to stay on active duty in the Marine Corps, or you're going to get out. You can go in the reserves and get a job. But if you leave, if you go back to active duty, you're going to lose this house." And my mother had worked so hard, so many hours to get us a home, me and her. I wasn't about to lose that house. So I made that decision, the fork in the road. I went right instead of going left, and I chose to get off of active duty. So I joined the reserves. And I remember when I joined the reserves, the recruiter said, "Hey, you guys are in the reserves. You're never going to go to combat. Don't worry about it. You're like the second string, third string. Don't just 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. Nothing's ever going to happen." And I said, "Okay, no problem. I can do that." And my uncle said, "You need to find a job." And I said, I don't know. I'm going to look for one." And I tried to find a job and I couldn't find one. And my uncle kept telling me, "Hey, there's bills to pay. This isn't for free. This isn't the Marine Corps where they tell you when to eat, sleep, and do everything else. You've got to come up with money to pay the bills for this house." And he finally suggested, "Hey, do you ever think about being a police officer?" And I said, "I got to be honest with you, Uncle John, nothing against you, but I hate the police. I kind of grew up not liking them. I ran from them a lot. And a couple times I got caught, it's just Chicago. You got kind of whooped up on a little bit when you got caught when you were young." And that was, back in the day. But either way, I eventually agreed and I took the test and I became a police officer. And it fell in line with that service to others before self. So I was all right with it. And I stayed in the reserves and life was good. I was out there fighting crime. I was going to clean up all the gangbangers and clean up the city and dun dun dun. I was going to take care of everything. And I met my former wife and we got married and we had our first child in 1999, my son, whom, by the way, is currently on his second enlistment as a United States Marine, and he's currently guarding the U.S. Embassy in Brazil. He's a sergeant right now, and I pray for him every day. I pray he never, ever has to go through what I'm about to talk about. And life was good, and we had him and the nice house with the white picket fence, and everything was great. And then 2001, September 11th happened. I remember that day I was asleep because I was on a SWAT team for 14 years, and that particular day we had a hostage barricaded subject, and I'd been up almost all night, and I was in bed, and my wife came in and woke me up, and she said, "You got to get up, you got to turn the TV on." I said, "I'm tired, I want to sleep." And she said, "You don't understand something. You got to turn the TV on." And she was crying and in shock, and I didn't get it, but I turned the TV on. And when I first looked, I thought it was a movie, and then it hit me that it wasn't a movie. And I watched the plane fly into the second plane fly into the tower in New York. I saw what happened in the Pentagon, and then the first American heroes in the war on terror. Those individuals on that flight that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. When they charged that cockpit, none of them were pilots. They made a conscious decision to take that plane, and that stuck with me. If I was on that plane, knowing that what I was about to do was going to end my life, absolutely positively end my life, could I do it? Would I do it? So that just struck me, and I got angry as a Marine. We are being attacked. This is our Pearl Harbor. We have to strike back. And I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to go. I'm trained for this. I've already been to war. I've been shot at. I've got that little bit of experience versus some people that don't. I've got experience on the street of what violence is. I know what it is. I know how to react to it. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I wasn't thinking about my son or my wife. I was thinking that I'm a United States Marine, and that by now I'm in the infantry. I left the artillery, and now I'm in the infantry, which is we're the guys that go out and find the bad guys, and we either capture them or we kill them. Simple as that. So I'm at home and I'm waiting for the phone to ring to call up my unit because I think everybody's going to go, and the invasion starts, and I'm at home on CNN and I'm watching it like everybody else, and nothing's happening, and all of a sudden my daughter's born. My little baby daughter, who is autistic and bipolar and intermittent explosive disorder and all these other things that are coming out, and she's got some birth defects, and here's this little itty bitty human that needs every bit of help that she can possibly get. And my mind starts to change. Okay, maybe I don't want to roar off into combat, and and find glory and all this other stuff. Maybe I want to stay here. But then one day the phone does ring in 2004, and my battalion of infantry is activated. And I have to look at my wife and tell her, I'm going. I've trained with these Marines. I'm not going to stay home. I've trained them. They're relying on me. I'm not going to just stay back. So off I go to war, and I end up in a place called the Triangle of Death. It's south of Baghdad by about 30 miles, and they call it the Triangle of Death because it's three, if you want to call them cities, villages, whatever you want to call it. But if you put a straight line between all three of them, it makes a triangle. And inside that triangle was one of the most vicious, one of the most dangerous, one of the most hectic places in Iraq at that time. And we landed right in the middle of it. And from day one, it was a battle every day, a battle for survival, a battle for, it was a moral fight because they were using kids for things that I don't even want to go into. They were doing things that I wouldn't even believe a human being would do. And we were just we had to defend ourselves. We had to protect people, and we had to try and bring stability to this region and try and help just the simple people that were out there. And I met some of the best people I've ever met in my life in Iraq, simple farmers that just wanted to live their lives. And then on November 11th of 2004, Veterans Day, on that day, we suffered a rocket attack, and I ended up getting hurt. I got hurt, but worse off, one of my other Marines got hurt, and it hurt me so bad because uh, I crawled to him when I came to, and he was really busted up really bad, and he was screaming for his mother, and he was so tore up. I thought, this is one of my Marines. I'm in charge of him, and he's not going to make it, and I'm watching him die in front of me. Luckily, we got him on a medevac and we got him out. And I didn't know for several days, but he did survive. However, 16 other of my brothers didn't come home. And the oldest one was, I believe, what, 23? And so here I am. I come home from that, and everything I saw and everything I did, I buried it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't care to know. I didn't know what a traumatic brain injury was. My physical injuries were healing. I just wanted to put it all behind me. So I took off my Marine Corps uniform and I put my police uniform back on. And I went back to work. And my wife started telling me, "You're not the same person. You're acting differently. You're scaring the kids. You're scaring me." And I said, "You know what? I'm fine. Don't worry about it. You stay in your lane. I'll stay in mine. I provide the money for the food and the clothing. You take care of the house. We take care of the kids. We go on vacation. I go out there and solve crimes. Everything's going to be just fine." Little did I know that inside of me, the nightmares that I was having, that I was trying to hide, the migraine headaches from the traumatic brain injury, the physical ailments from my lower back, the fact that the back of my head had been split open on the inside and I was healing wrong and I didn't even know it. Um, all of that stuff was taking a toll, but I was ignoring it as to the best of my ability. And the way I was doing that was after work, going to the bar with my friends from work and having a couple of beers and talking about anything and anything except Iraq. And wouldn't get help from the VA, wouldn't do anything. And I kept doing that, kept doing that. And then all of a sudden, 2007 came and the phone rang again. And we went back to Iraq again. And I was happy to go back to Iraq. I felt better going back there. I felt like I was going back home because I understood Iraq. It was simple. You lived or you died. You killed or you got killed. That was just basically it. So we went back to Iraq again, and this time, it wasn't as bad as it was in 2004, 2005, which was good. But I had this overwhelming fear that I was not going to come home this time, and I basically believed that I wasn't going to come home. I just gave up and said, I know I'm going to die here, and so it is what it is. Um, so I detached myself from everything and everybody, and I just gave up and said, "Ah, I'm going to die here. It's okay. I think I've done a good life to the best of my ability." That didn't happen. We did lose some Marines, and that was sad, and I felt bad. And, I came home and I went to some more funerals. I couldn't tell you how many funerals I'd been to, but I was so disconnected with everything, and my emotions were so buried and tangled up, and I was just a walking zombie. And I went to the VA because my wife threatened to leave me. I went to the VA and they gave me half a ton of medication, and I started taking it, and it just made me even more of a zombie. And I didn't want to get any help, and I wasn't listening to my wife, and I was at work just trying to do my job to the best of my ability. Um, and I was going downhill fast. And then one day in 2014, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Wounded Warrior Project?" And I said, "No, not really. I don't know what that is." And he said, "Well, Wounded Warrior Project is this big organization. They help veterans." And I said, "Well, okay, but isn't that for like people that are missing legs and arms and all that stuff?" He's like, "No, no, not really. It's a lot more than just that." So he cajoled me into going to an event in Chicago, the Air and Water Show, actually. Big event. And I went down there and I got to hang out with some veterans, and I started talking to them a little bit, and I realized I wasn't the only one that was having the nightmares, the sleepless nights, hypervigilance, the mood swings, the depression, all the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. I wasn't the only one on the planet that was having a problem. Other people were too. And it actually felt good to start talking to other people about what I was going through instead of burying it inside. And it felt good to do that. And I learned some stuff. And I actually I heard about a guy, and I found out about one individual whom I talked to who had everything blown off from the waist down in Afghanistan. And when I talked to him, he said, you know what? I'm going to have a wife, and I'm going to have a baby, and we're going to have a house, and I'm going to live my life. And I looked at him like, what? How are you going to do all this? He said, because I believe in myself, and I'm not going to let what happened to me stop me. So it was a good event, and I walked away from there with a little bit of hope. But by then, my marriage had suffered so much that my former wife finally just gave up. And I remember the day I was served divorce papers. And I think everything inside of me that I had buried because I didn't know how to deal with it. I had a therapist tell me one time, your soul is like a bag. You can only stuff so much into it, and one or two things are going to happen. One, it's going to overflow, or two, it's going to break. But either one, it's a bad thing. It's going to end up as something bad's going to happen. Well, on that particular day, when I got served divorce papers, everything overflowed, and I ended up in a car on the side of the road with my service weapon buried in my head. As I sat there, it was quiet, and I remember thinking, I'm a pretty bad Marine. I promised a lot of folks that I would bring all my Marines home. I would bring all the Marines home, and 16 of them didn't come home. They came home in boxes. Um, and then two more, so 18 total. And then, I'm not a very good cop because this whole big thing about me, you know, stopping crime, well, that didn't work out too well. I was so beat down by just dealing with the worst that humanity can give you most of the time. There were moments of brightness, but most of the time it was just dealing with bad stuff. I'm just tired. I'm burned out. And then I must not be a very good father because my wife's willing to take my children away from me. And I knew all I had to do was squeeze a trigger. I'm sorry, 4.2 pounds of pressure, I believe it was. And there'd be no more pain. Um, I wasn't thinking about my children. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was thinking about myself. But then all of a sudden, I started thinking about that guy with everything gone from the waist down. And for the first time in my life, I made a decision um, that I never thought I would make. I put the gun down and I went and I raised my hand and I said, I need help. Um, I need a lot of help. I am all over the place emotionally, mentally. I need a lot of help. And so Wounded Warrior Project stepped up and they said, listen, we're here. We're going to help you. Okay. And they started me in on some programs. And Wounded Warrior Project has over 20 programs for our warriors. One of the programs is called the Project Odyssey. And what it is they sent me out for 4 days with other veterans. And we went out and we did whitewater rafting in Long Creek, South Carolina. Now, here's a city boy, whitewater rafting, never did that. Very interesting. I got the numbers mixed up. I thought one was the worst rapids and five were the easy ones. So I was talking a lot of trash when we were in the one rapids, and the guy kept telling me, okay, okay. When we hit the fives, I was practicing my little girl scream and trying to hug the big recon Marine that was sitting in front of me. He kept telling me to let him go because he didn't want to be hugged like that. I kept telling him, we're all going to die, and this really is horrible. He's like, no, we're not going to die. But anyways, um, there's some GoPro footage of that somewhere, but they won't show it to me. But I got to talk to these guys, and I started to open up. And we did a ropes course, and I started to trust myself that I wasn't going to fall, that I wasn't going to let myself fall. And so after 4 days of not just rafting, and climbing, but talking and talking and getting to know yourself again, I realized that I wasn't alone. I was absolutely not alone, and that there were people out there that were willing to help me. And I needed to help myself first. And when I say that Wounded Warrior Project saved my life, I don't say it as because it sounds good. They did, literally. And another program I went on was called Soldier Ride. I got to go biking through New York and out to Long Island with a bunch of other veterans, males and females, and once again, I surpassed goals that I'd set for myself, and I got to meet other veterans that are lifelong friends, and I created camaraderie. I created a net that if I'm having a bad day, I can pick up a phone and I can talk to somebody. And Wounded Warrior Project, all the money that comes into Wounded Warrior Project, people ask me, so how much of the dollar goes towards the programs? And oh well, I say, go to Better Business Bureau or Charity Navigator. It says 73.2% of the dollar goes towards the actual programs, and the rest goes towards keeping the lights on and paying the employees like me. Well, guess what? 100% of that dollar goes towards helping the veterans, because if I can't go out and help another veteran and play it forward, or we don't have a place for a veteran to go to get the services that he needs, then we wouldn't exist in the first place. And Wounded Warrior Project helps thousands and thousands of veterans daily through our talk program. Once a week, I get a phone call from someone, and I just talk things out with that individual. I've never met them in person. It's not therapy, it's therapeutic. Physical health and wellness program. I gained a lot of weight because I wasn't working out. I was isolating myself. I got really good at Call of Duty. I don't know why. I just turned 53 years old and I was playing Call of Duty. Who knows, a couple years back, but I needed to get out of the house, and I got a coach through Wounded Warrior Project, and I got back in the gym, and I lost some weight, and I got physically better, and that helped me mentally. Our Warrior Care Network, which is 4 hospitals across the country. I know if I'm having a bad moment and the PTSD is really overrunning me, I can pick up the phone and I can ask to be put through to the counseling department for Warrior Care Network and ask and get basically get vetted and get into that program. And Rush Hospital in Illinois, here in Chicago, I can go in for a 2-week program where I get professional therapy for PTSD. And then it just doesn't stop there. There's aftercare, but there's a safety net there. And all of this exists because Wounded Warrior Project exists. And Wounded Warrior Project exists because people find it in their heart and their mind to donate money to Wounded Warrior Project so that we can do what we need to do to help those that have given so much. And I see it every day when I travel this country. I talk to veterans all the time, and I see nothing but positive results from Wounded Warrior Project. And I like to look at myself as a positive result, and now I'm trying to play it forward, and I'm trying to continue what my mother taught me, which is service to others before self. Like I said at the beginning, Wounded Warrior Project's mission is to honor and empower our nation's warriors. And I live that, and we do that every day. I don't know of a single person that works for the project that doesn't do that every day. We're committed to doing this. I'm committed to doing this. So that is Wounded Warrior Project. And I will tell you, if you want to learn more, everything now, I grew up without computers, and my first cell phone looked like a brick, but woundedwarriorproject.org, woundedwarriorproject.org. You go there and you can read testimonies from people, from warriors across the country. And I'm not a hero, but I've walked among them. And there are some true heroes on that page. Men and women that have just given so much. So take the time, investigate, learn more. And if you have any questions of me, Amber will have my information. You can call me up. If I don't have the answer, I'll find it for you. like I said, I'm proud of the 30 years I did. I retired as a sergeant major, and my son is a Marine now, and I pray for him every day. And we're just going to keep moving forward. And I appreciate you letting me put this out there. Last thing I say is when I talk and I talk about it, it's taken me years to get to the point where I can talk about it like I do now. It's a little bit more of a healing step for me. And I thank you for allowing me to take another step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We really appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us today and giving us great information on some of the Wounded Warrior projects. We are looking forward to raising some money for this organization, and we certainly understand more about what they do now thanks to you. So very much
Appreciate it.
appreciated, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody be safe. Have a great day.